Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday morning at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And this is a new one for our returning guests. We're here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. So that's 9 programs, 9 different conversations, 9 guests, 9 different topics that you're going to want to tune into to help you, to support you in the work you are doing, as well as to help us change the world for the better for everyone. And we stream those programs at those times at richarddugan.com. We podcast at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. And we're on YouTube, where you can watch these interviews. We hope that you will. We hope you'll subscribe as well as click notification so that when I do post a new conversation, you will know about it and you'll be able to tune into it and listen in and glean all kinds of great information. We also ask that if you can support us financially, you want to be a part of the work that we are doing as well, then we have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for the email address to whom you're sending, richard@richarddugan.com is the email, richard@richarddugan.com. We also ask that you spend some time during the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s. Go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place, listening to that still small voice. With all of that being said, and we'll mention it again later on in the program, we have a returning guest. I'm very excited to have her back here with us because the conversations are always fascinating. We have with us Dianne Collins. She has been with us a number of times. She is an original thinker, a popular media personality as well, and the creator of QuantumThink. That is a system we'll talk about of thinking, as well as the author of the 6-time award-winning best-selling book, Do You Quantum Think? New thinking that will rock your world. Dianne, welcome back to Tell Me Your Story. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's always such a joy and so much fun. And I'm always excited because I never know exactly what we're going to talk about, but I know that we'll have fascinating conversations. So thank you again for having me.
Well, as you know, the universe is in charge, and I always find it fascinating, obviously, to start for those who maybe are tuning in for the first time, because it's been a little while since you've been with us, to talk a little bit about the concept, if you will, or even the philosophy behind quantum thinking and what sets that apart just from the regular old ordinary I'm just going to sit here and think about stuff. What's the difference between just shall we say regular and quantum thinking?
Regular and quantum thinking. Okay. Well, I thought about this today because I had a feeling you'd ask me that. And every time I get asked that, I answer it with a little variation on a theme. And today I had my little sharp maverick tongue out, which is, we don't know how to think for this world.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? It means that we're in a world, particularly today, but always, where at its basis, it's a universe of uncertainty, meaning things are changing every minute, right? As people's cliche say, the only constant is change.
Right.
Things are speeding up. This is a scientific fact, but we don't need science to let us know that, because we experience this today ourselves. And of course, our technology is moving that along, a catalyst considerably. So everything's accelerating. There is, because of our systems and structures in society, the institutions, government, medical, education, judicial, even entertainment, sports, everything is undergoing a restructuring. That's been going on for a while. So with all this going on, and that lends to the uncertainty, and then why am I saying we don't know how to think for this world? Oh, and I left out something very important, is that we're becoming more and more aware of being that we live in a multi-dimensional reality. So what's the difference? Why quantum thinking? Because we live in a universe of systems. And we may not have thought about this, but thinking takes place as a system. This is what happened to me as I discovered, because the question I was in was, I was like, thinking creates reality. If you want to change your results, change your thinking. Okay, well, if thinking creates reality, what's creating our thinking? And this is when I went on my quest of life. I think it was, meant to be, come through me, the idea of quantum principles, spiritual wisdom coming together in a practical way so that we can go from merely knowing the wisdom conceptually to actually living it. So what is the quantum thinking? Is that what system have we been thinking in? Well, we haven't been thinking in the quantum system. We go back and forth. And what does that mean? Because we were conditioned, and this is still going on. As I say, we're in a quantum age, still very much under industrial age thinking, also known as scientific materialism. So in that, which began in the 17th century, where scientists declared only physical matter is real, thus orienting us, even though they knew they were spiritual, etc., and tuned into the divine as well, but yet on a societal, everyday level, we've been really, our thinking has been, I was going to say indoctrinated, but it's really conditioned by the assumptions of that world view, which I lovingly call the old worldview. So we're not trading one worldview in for another, but what quantum thinks. So I thought, well, wait a minute. We're thinking the old worldview saw reality as fixed and static, right? Fixed and static objects appear, like you can't put your hand through your computer screen, not yet, unless you're very advanced, and then you can. But that, we're in a world, in the physical domain, we look separate, we look different. And so we have all this divisiveness going on. You look different than me, or you have a different this. And so when I say we don't know how to think for this world, because the grander, more divine, wiser reality is the more expansive one that a quantum worldview not only acknowledges, but has actually verified over and over again over the last 100+ years. And so we know all of our technology is based on that new quantum worldview. From a science perspective, I'm not a scientist. So what is quantum thinking? What's my role? Is that since I know that the assumptions of the prevailing worldview shape the way we think, and that eventually, I've read in a book about Einstein, that eventually these concepts, these ideas seep into our culture through the language and eventually into our thinking. And I thought, why wait? If we know now about the more expanded, more accurate and up-to-date, more joyful reality that gives us access to being in command of ourselves in a more creative way, in a more joyful way, like going from victim to creator. Well, then going back to, if you want to change your results, change your thinking. So it's not just changing a thought, one thought at a time. It's literally taking a quantum leap to a new system of thinking based in these quantum principles, like how they apply. How does that map onto human thinking? That's my part. And in fact, how they also converge and always have, but now being, reestablished, the convergence of quantum insight with spiritual universal wisdom common to all traditions. And again, my part is, well, how do we live that? We're in an everyday, ordinary reality. We're in a modern beginning of the 21st century. We want to know, how do we live this? How do we master it? That's quantum thinking. So to just wrap it up, I put together what came through me as the main principles, which I call distinctions in thinking, 21 plus 1 in the system. I don't know why I say it that way. It's somewhat numerological, but the last one, the plus 1, number 22, master number being living fully dimensionally, but 21 plus 1, 21 distinctions that are based in the science and spirituality that give us access to activating that knowledge, that experience. It's an activation within ourselves. When you read it, if you listen to it, I have the video masterclass, we have an audio program, I have an audio book, plus, hardcover and Kindle, Do You Quantum Think? However you take it in, if you're listening to me, Dianne, and Richard Dugan right now, it's the same thing. How you take it in activates that wisdom that is within each one of us, because we're all connected. That's the oneness to infinite intelligence, divine intelligence, source intelligence, whatever you want to call it. It only requires tuning in, right? Changing the station, right? On the radio of your being, switching that channel over a little. And then it comes in loud and clear. It activates in you. And that's what integrates this wisdom so that you can live it rather than just know it.
Makes me think of a conversation that I had in regards to a phrase that we use all the time, giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And to that point, all of the choices that we have made throughout our lives have brought us, you and I in particular, and specifically have brought you and I to this moment right here. And I take it quite literally all the way back to our childhood, even though you and I never had any inkling of who the other is or was. The choices we were making back then have brought us here. Now, the next part of that is all of the choices that you and I are going to make from this point forward are going to place us where we will be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, and so forth. Then one of my guests added a wonderful addendum. Said, that is true. However, the choices you will be making will be based upon your perception of what you think or believe the future will be. So if you're a pessimist, let's just say, you believe that it's all going to come crashing down, coming to an end, etc., you very well might make all of your choices. You might become a prepper, dig a hole in the ground and line it with concrete and fill it with provisions for you and your family to survive whatever apocalyptic event is going to happen. I myself am an optimist. I don't believe that that is going to happen. I believe that even though I've often said this many times, Dianne, if we were to hold a seminar for the rest of the universe, it would be in crisis management because we do not know how to prepare, not if, but when certain things are going to happen. We know they're going to happen, but we refuse to do anything about it until the last minute. We know who
Okay.
okay. So
I want to give a different view on this, but go
please,
ahead.
that's
I
what this
didn't want to
program's
show.
about. It's a conversation.
Okay,
So
because,
go right ahead.
well, what you're saying is, of course, it's completely valid that we don't know for sure what is going to happen. And then, getting back to what's the difference between quantum thinking and ordinary thinking is that when you're quantum thinking, you realize, again, there's no fixed way that something is.
Mm-hmm.
So even though there are tendencies, let's say in the mystic arts, which astrology happens to be a hobby of mine for many years, or whether it's any of the mystic arts where it's a kind of a soul blueprint, well, does that mean that that's the prediction of your life? No, you have predilection, you have, or you could say, probability wave field in a universe of infinite possibility. But getting back to what I was going to say, so we're in this, so you're kind of validating the difference between industrial age thinking, which was based on fixed set of circumstances. Oh no, my husband is that way. Oh no, my manager really is that way. And you dig up all the evidence. And the fact is, in every moment, we have the opportunity to shift the present, which shifts the future. In fact, from a quantum worldview, you can even shift the past. So this is what the scientists say. Things move backward and forward through time because time is really an overlay. But I've had real life experiences myself. But we can talk about that in a minute because I wanted to get back to this idea of, well, it's not whether you're a pessimist or an optimist. That, yes. But the idea is if you are a consciously awakened choice and you understand the cosmic principles, the operating principles, that's one kind of what I call 3 classes of wisdom, and you know how to use them, then you know that every moment, as you said, Richard, the choices that you're making, and we're not always clearly a choice. I talked about that on our last show together. You're making decisions, but they're not necessarily awakened choice. We should talk about that too. But just looking at today, because this is something I'm very fond of saying, that with all the intensive change going on today, the uncertainty, right? That you said, what it's going to be. Is my life going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Is the world going to fall apart? Are the aliens, are they safe? Are they not safe? Are there aliens? But any of these, quote, realities that we decide to tune into, the fact is that we're living in this world and the changes are here. And we know, and this is from planetary energies, which tend to have guide the way things are going to go, so to speak, energetically speaking. That and focus, I always say, God uses his planets to tell us, where do we need to focus now? Okay, so we need to focus Age of Aquarius, it's called now, that we're going full-fledged into, and at least the next 20 years going to be a lot different than the last 20 years. That because it's what? Humanity coming together. So getting back to, I say there are at least 3 ways, and I like to distinguish these 3 ways that we can be with the changes. You can hide and pretend, stick your head in the sand. Hopefully it's all going to go back to the way it used to be. Probably not. Secondly, you can adapt. Well, that sounds reasonable, right? Oh, yeah, changes, we can adapt. However, adapt, in my view, means that things are like coming at you, right? It's all coming like a barrage of change every day.
Yeah.
And you're going to try to figure out how you're going to be with it. Okay, that's a reasonable way, however, not a masterful way. And it may not be that much of a joyful way either. The third way, the preferred way, the quantum thinking way, is to lead. You become a force. So hide, adapt, become a force, which is another way of saying lead. You become a force in the way things are going to go, because you realize that there is a purpose for your being here. There is a purpose overall to the unfolding of life, of reality, that we're here, we know there's evolution. And it's either going to be what I say in Do You Quantum Think, you're going to evolve. Is it going to be crisis evolution or conscious evolution? Because one way or another, this is the nature of life, to evolve, to go to its next highest place. Now, thus far, sadly, in our society, there is so much goodness, right, in civilization, but we also know all the dregs of it, which is all being exposed right now, full-fledged, full tilt boogie. But so unfortunately, it's been mostly crisis awakening. And even today, you can see, what were the crisis awakening? 9/11, this event, that event. I'm not going back in history because I like going forward. So you can ask yourself right now, and quantum think is a mastery practice. For me, it's all about mastery. What are we mastering? Mastering our ability to be a force. And the force will be with us when we become a force, because that's one and the same, that we become a force by virtue of our conscious intent to be a force. We become a force by virtue of knowing that there are operating principles and laws that are the laws of creation, the dynamics of creation that we as human beings have been divinely bestowed with by virtue of human birth, that we become consciously aware of those and learn how they work and how to master them. Thinking being one of them. There's a big conflict. People go, oh, forget thinking, come to the heart. And then the other thing is, the Buddha said, all that you are is the result of what you have thought. It's everywhere. And so we can't there's a disconnect there. All right, we'll get back to that. So becoming a force, taking a choice of conscious evolution, beginning with ourselves. You may not want to be saving the world or even saving the whales. I do, but you do too. A lot of people listening here. Wherever you're listening on those hundreds of avenues that Richard gave you, thank goodness he's making it available all over the place, wherever you are and however you tune in, that we have that choice. And once you create that intent, that activates what is going to show up circumstantially for you. And it's not like we're not going to be challenged. The challenges are here. The circumstances are real. The circumstances are not fixed. They're real, they're valid, they're not absolute. How do we know this? Because we're in so far, a quantum-based reality. Everything is energy in flux, informed by intelligence, shifting and changing in every moment. And we, as human beings, are the focal point of what we put our attention on. We activate, we generate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what, for me, this is all about right now. Are we going to hide and pray that, oh my God, when is this going to be over? Wake me when it's over, right? Are we going to adapt like, oh my God, I didn't know that was coming? There, some of it probably will have to be that anyway. It's not like you can control every circumstance. However, we have complete jurisdiction, sovereignty over how we choose to be related to the circumstances that arise. And not only that, if you take on being in the mastery practice, as I say in my, in all my teachings, what's the alternative? Mediocrity? Would you choose mediocrity, or are you going to choose mastery? So when you choose mastery, the universal intelligence works with you. You know this. And it gets better and better. Life gets better. That's how you know. You don't know, like, fill in the picture of exactly how the future is going to be, but you know you are a force in generating how you want it to be.
It's the way you've put that together, the way you've phrased it is fascinating to me from the standpoint that the first two options, and I saw it rear its ugly head for the second time in my lifetime in 2015, and I had first seen it, consciously saw it when I was maybe 21 years old. Victimhood. And I thought, 2015 rolls around and I here it is again. What the? No. I already played that game. I do not want to play that game again.
Right.
And then you have the other aspect of adapting. And it's like, okay, that's great. All right, we'll adapt, we'll shift, we'll do this, we'll do that, do the other. Both of those two options are extremely energy dependent. They will wear you out. Even burying your head in the sand will wear you out physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Exactly, because it's resistance.
Even adapting is still resistance. And I think that when I interviewed this gentleman, Jacques Fresco of the Venus Project, he was
I met Jacques Fresco.
Yeah. He
Alan
said,
and I were at his house
oh,
in Central Florida.
yeah, and I had a great conversation with him where I asked him after near the end of the program, the first program we did together. I said, "So, will these changes happen in my lifetime?" And he looked at me. I think we were doing Skype at the time, and he's, "Well, I don't think so. Not in your lifetime. Certainly not in mine, because he was already 94." And he says, "But it's going to take us raising our consciousness." And it goes back to something that Einstein's also said, that you cannot solve or deal with a challenge with the same consciousness that created it. So all of the challenges that we are facing today cannot be solved by the same consciousness that created them. We must, and again, using your terminology and so forth, we must shift our thinking. We need to, as you phrased it, quantum think. And for a lot of people, that goes against their grain. I get that, because they're either with the head in the sand or they're adjusting. And there are
But you know
people
what?
who want things the way they were. And it's like, but REM said it best. It's the end of the world as we know it. And what that to me means is even 5 minutes ago, that's gone. And
That's right.
5 days and 5 years and 50 years and 500 years, it's gone. You can't go, no matter how hard you resist, okay? You can't go back. The universe won't allow it.
That's true. But you know what? There's also, and this is where to my
Mhm.
husband has this phrase. I wrote an article about it. Wrote, to be honest with you, I go, well, does that mean before you said that you weren't going to be honest with me? And to be honest with you, I say the catchphrase. To be honest with you, now I forgot what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
That the thing that drives me like a little crazy when I'm listening to, smart, enlightened, on the path people is that, and this is no one's fault, okay? As I say, blame it on the old worldview, because they call it classical mechanical worldview. It gave rise to what? Machines. And machines wind it up, turn it on, and it just runs, automatically. And so in many ways, we have that automatic functioning going on, which we need. Obviously, body wouldn't work. So many things wouldn't work. Typing, playing an instrument. So, and this is my point, is that when you're quantum thinking, you go from an either or to a both and way framework. Now, people know these phrases. This is the difference between knowing it conceptually. Oh yeah, I know, it's both and.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a vast difference, a universe apart between knowing it as a concept and actually living it. So when I'm listening to people speaking and I hear the either or, I call it the insidious either or going on all the time. And I mentioned one of it before where people say, drop into your heart. Well, okay, yes, it's a heart-based, we're everything. The spiritual masters in certain traditions, they say the mind, because I talk about mind,
Mm-hmm.
mind meaning what we hold in awareness, what we hold in consciousness. So we are individualized forms of the all-pervasive, all that is infinite consciousness. And it becomes individualized in us, but we're still connected to it, the infinity of it. So by mind, the mantra of quantum think, when you master your mind, you master your life, meaning mastering what you hold in awareness, in consciousness. As you said, you paraphrased beautifully Albert Einstein. I think he said, can't solve problems with the same level of thinking that created them.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking obviously is related, but we hear this either or stuff going on with people saying, oh, forget thinking. I say thinking gets a bad rap, and yet thinking is how we relate. It's a tool of creation. So if thinking creates reality, then we need to become masterful with thinking. Now, one of the things, so getting back to the either or to both and, is that there's so much of this going on. No, it's not either the mind or the heart, it's both.
Mm-hmm.
Because the very first distinction in quantum think is holistic and holographic, that we live in a universe of whole systems. People like to say now the multiverse. Okay, whatever. And what does it mean? Everything is interconnected and interrelated. And I've heard you talk about holograms, where a very good friend of mine was one of the very first holographers, and I've been in his holography studio years and years ago, where you cut a piece of the film and it's made with laser lights, and every piece of the film contains the whole of the image. So
Right.
you could say, in our lives, okay, and I take it to like the everyday life, we look at our lives in increments, right? Oh, I used to do that, or when I was 5 years old, I was this, I look. But where life, I like to think of it entertaining wise, like is one whole story. And like a well-written novel or screenplay, there's nothing in it that doesn't belong. There's nothing in it that's left out, except we continue to evolve it. Okay, so we're the writer, director, producer, not the executive producer, but the rest.
Right.
And so when you look at this holistic and holographic, you don't then make these either or, oh, we better not think anymore, because that's going to interfere with the sanctity and the intelligence of the heart. Well, this is what the difference you asked between ordinary thinking and quantum thinking is, that when you're quantum thinking, you're in that new framework. So it's not a question of perception, which has to do with the physical domain, but it's a question of, I can think in these terms. If I were thinking in both and, what would that be? If I looked at politics today and I was thinking in, to bring up a hot topic, in both and, what would that look like? How would I be relating? Because people like to think of, we think we're so virtuous. I mean, we all do. I include myself in all this, that sometimes, let's just say, how we think we are and how the behavior acts out don't always match up. However, when you're quantum thinking, the idea is to think of yourself as the highest. Okay. So I'll just tell you something I've been thinking about, because I want to know how you see this.
Okay.
So I've been thinking lately, is, people are into mindfulness, meditation, which is great. It's being brought to executives. It's being brought, it's becoming a mass conscious thing. Excellent. As I say, mindfulness is a start, but it's not mastery. It's two different things. But what I was been thinking about in that realm is that, and Alan Collins, as I like to always mention, my partner in all things, my husband, my partner in business for 30 plus years, master quantum think coach, laser quantum think coach. And over the weekend, we were doing meditation, an online meditation kind of intensive in one of the yogic traditions. And, you're in this meditation thing, right? And you're like, happy, right? You say, get in touch with that still voice, 100, 1000%. Go out in nature, you're feeling good, you're looking at the eclipse, you're seeing, the northern lights. It's all beautiful, it is. But then, and I was thinking, oh, this feels so good, 3 hours, then you're out, but we're living most of the time in life, in the 3D.
Yeah.
We're in the reality of, we live in a condominium, Miami Beach area. Everybody in the condo, they can't agree, they're fighting, there's all this divisiveness. I think it's, divided by the atmosphere of divisiveness, generally speaking, but you're back in there. Or I'm, having dinner with Alan, having what I call our daily debates, So you're living the life. And so what is mastery? Is being able to, and I say, what it's not about that you're in the transcendent state, connected, all that is knowing yourself as God. God is in us, we are God, that type of consciousness, which that is the ultimate consciousness, but it's a both and. That with quantum thinking, the intent is that we live in that state of awareness, established in that state of awareness, while we are engaged in the so-called 3D everyday, what's going on in your ordinary daily life reality, with all the vicissitudes, the beauty, the beautiful family things, the loneliness, all, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the sublime. And the idea is that if you become established in that state, that when you're in the meditation, during the practices, living in that state, that is going to shape the choices. What you were talking about at the beginning, Richard, about, everything we do up until this point, and maybe even previous incarnations, if you believe in such things.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I've been thinking about. I go, look, yeah, it's easy when you're sitting in a meditation seminar, but the real mastery is right now, in this moment. What judgments does anyone have about anyone else, right?
Yeah.
What can we move on? Ellen and I call it next point, because we're tennis players. And I had this tennis coach once, and every time I'd miss the ball, and she'd say, don't have a mini depression every time you miss the ball, Dianne, next point. So if we get into a state that is an undesirable state, an upset, too much, conflict is part of life. It makes entertainment, but not necessarily something that you want to be staying in that state. And so can you snap out of it? And that's a level of mastery. It's like, and we use that phrase, okay, next point. I mean, we could be in a really heated, whatever, conflict. Next point, do we want to stay in this state, or do we want to move on and have a lovely evening? And it really does come to that. So what do you think about what I'm saying about, sure, it's easy when you're sitting in this meditative, you're in an ashram, wherever you are, you're at home on your little, asana mat. And that's great. But what about the rest?
Yeah. Well, on part of that, I would say that I remember hearing that, for example, those who do, we'll call it cloister themselves away. All right. They are there doing their meditation, they're doing their prayer, and so forth. And it's done globally, right? Those are individuals who are sort of not entirely putting this on them, but to a certain extent, they're the glue that's sort of holding the world together so that it doesn't just blow apart. Okay. They are the glue of sorts, up to a certain level. And yet part of the reason that we are here, and again, I'm not sitting here going to answer the question, why am I here? The profundities thereof. But part of it has to do with going through the various challenges. And I prefer to use the word challenges because I don't believe in success and failure anymore. What I believe in is in life lessons. And I was challenged once by someone who said, well, what about all the mistakes you've made? And I said, well, I hate to be the bearer of, if I may use the dualistic term, bad news. I have never made a mistake in my life. Never. What I have had
Good.
are life lessons. I learned from those experiences what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And I think that there are times when we do need to separate ourselves from the 3D world. Okay. There are times when we need to step away because our body, mind, and soul need a rest.
Exactly.
Yeah, I will tell you that, I'm hearing, I was listening to an interview just the other day, and it had to do with one of the 3D issues that's out there, right? And the concern over why isn't this group in our population? Why aren't they more up in arms? Why aren't they more opposed to what's happening and so on and so on and so on? And I said, well, my observation is they, like many of us, are exhausted over the last 9 years. We are spent. We don't want anything more to do with that part of the 3D world. It will take care of itself. Okay. And that's why people are not participating in what these folks in this interview think that we should be. You need to be active and you need to be involved and you need to do this and you need to do that. And I'm going, no, I don't. I don't need to do anything that I don't want to do. I am not going to give my power and my energies to things that are not just in my best interest, but in the best interest of I'll use the term, the collective. And so on the one hand, we need to take time, step away, as has often been said to me through the last few years in some of the challenges that I've been facing. I would hear Richard, I see what you're doing and I understand why you're doing what you're doing, but you need to make sure to take care of you. Take care of you. And I think that's part of what you're talking about here in terms of what you and Alan have done in one of these retreats, if you will. That we all need. A matter of fact, I think back to a retreat that I went on. It was 2.5 days. And it was actually where I had to be driven north of Phoenix, across the highway from Black Canyon City. There's this retreat center that's operated by some Catholic nuns, where you call and you say, "Hey, I would like one of your." They weren't even large enough to be called tiny houses, but they were rooms that had air conditioning and so forth. You brought your own bedding, your own food, et cetera, et cetera. And I was up there from a Friday night to a Sunday night, all by myself. Now there were other people up there, but we did our utmost to keep our distance, to respect one another's space. Even though I did find the tunnel under the highway to Black Canyon City on the other side of the roadway, because I wanted to go for a walk and go into town and maybe stop at the store and grab something. And I drew and I wrote in my journals and I sang my songs. I had one of those little Walkman CD players back then. This was some time ago. And then the gal came and picked me up Sunday evening, and it was really nice. And I needed that. And we need to take
We
time to
need
do that.
that. We do. I'm
Yeah.
not saying not that.
No, no, no.
What I'm saying is you take that, as a friend of mine here in the building, he's a big wisdom teacher, like a street person. He goes, he'll do like a big, healing Om circle. And then he goes, take it to the 7-Eleven. This is what he means, is that
Yeah.
you take that into the world. We
Yes.
do need that. That's like, to use the tennis analogy, something I know, you're conditioning yourself when you go on a retreat. Or Alan and I have a meditation every morning together, a practice that we do. Mostly it's a reading aloud, spiritual, universal literature and or from the masters. And it's our way of tuning in together to start the day. So it's something I've been doing like forever. So I'm not saying not to do that, but what I am saying is that's easier than actually taking it to the 7-Eleven that we need now, that we are in a time of making wisdom practical, of living it. And this has been my quest, is that I think, you know, a big aspect of my purpose is to actually express this message, what I'm saying right now, and to do everything I can to catalyze all of us, humanity, going from knowing the wisdom to living it. And astrologically speaking, we're in that time right now where it's going to the higher consciousness, going to new ways of thinking, going to innovative ways, going into the unexpected ways that will just all of a sudden shake everything up and make those quantum shifts within ourselves and within the world. And this is why it's good to be able to tune into it. What I said at the beginning, we don't know how to think for this world because we're still trying to get everything pinned down, certain, don't make a move until you know what's going to happen. It doesn't work that way. As you say, it's not going back. So it's a question of that now, making wisdom practical in our lives, taking it where, you know how, Richard, people used to say, people on the path, and or they still even say it to me sometimes, well, I live this way, I'm spiritual, but I can't talk to anybody about this, or they'll think I'm, you know, Looney Tune. Some of the things, right? You've heard this.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And yet, and I said, no, I've never felt that way, because it's a question of authenticity as well. Is that how do we integrate wisdom, living the wisdom in the collective, in the world? How do we shift the field? And I think it will be a field effect that finally shifts consciousness. Some people like to say one person at a time. It's a both and, okay. One person at a time. It starts within us. But there can be a field effect, like a vortex. You walk into a cathedral, or where you were when you went to that retreat.
Yeah.
You go into that atmosphere, and that atmosphere takes you with it. So that, or you've been, you know, if people say, what comes to mind, I've been in the presence of several self-realized masters who are public leaders in that area, but including the Dalai Lama. And you're in that atmosphere. Alan always talks about how Richard Gere says, why do you want to be with the Dalai Lama? Because you're in the atmosphere of a being who's living in a more freer state of being, in a, we could say, more enlightened state. And it's a vortex. It takes you with it. So how do we actually change the world? And you said it before, the people who are doing, and I have a very good friend who's has an everyday, I can't remember, should be mad at me, I can't remember the name of her project, but it's a peace project. Alan and I are, one of our clients started a nonprofit called the Peace, Harmony, and Joy Alliance, and we're on the board of that. So there are hundreds and maybe thousands of these organizations of what you're talking about, where people come together, and on shows like yours, come together to have conscious conversations, to have a more awakened view, to open our minds more. And that is keeping balance in the world, right? It's at the same time, whether wanting to be a force in it, how do we change the world, is it is a shift to a quantum state, to a state of freedom. And you said it, in the issues, you know, as I like to say, I'm neither party, I'm the transcendent party, where you stay in a transcendent state so that you can see clearly and you can hold that energy field for yourself and therefore others. And this is what begins to shift the world. I just want to say something about activism, is that activism, I like to predict we're going to have a new kind of activism, what you and I are talking about, actively generating a new quantum field of freedom beyond our automatic conditioned beliefs and differences. And not that we're not going to have, we're all individual, right? The paradox of being human. We're universally the same and individually unique in just such beautiful snowflake ways. That activism has to go in the way that we've known it, right? REM, and I've said that myself. The end of the world as we know it, right? Who was it? The Mayans said it, the Hopis, everybody said, the end of the world as we know it, because that's evolution. But if you think about activism, what's going on right now, whatever you think about it, if you protest against what you're doing, is you're bringing up opposition. So just in terms of ordinary logic for people who are conscious creators, this is not the most effective way. I'm not saying it doesn't make a difference. I'm not in favor of it. Never been thrown to do it, nor would I be, because anytime you go against, you're going to bring up that opposition. So I like, what this, going back to the either or insidious either or, and try to walk over to the both and. Okay. We have companies that have produced fossil fuels that we need oil for, I think 40,000 products that we use a day. But and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to get in tune with nature and improve the environment. Definitely, yes. But let's be a little bit more intelligent about it. Do we want to get rid of, anyone who's rich? This is what all the either or I'm talking about. Get rid of the rich because they have too much money. It's a ridiculous statement, because it's a both and. It's an all-inclusive universe, right? Go to these resorts, all inclusive, there's whatever you want to make it, and there may be some karma dharma involved in whether you have money or not. But the point is, why do we kill off corporations? That is not a good idea. But how do we have conversations together where we can actually together generate transformation so that we can help people along the way? We can help, when I say help, and there are a million things behind the scenes. I listen to all that too, right?
Yeah.
The behind the scenes, the power behind the power, and it's not just the politicians or the nation state leaders. And I'm sure you are aware of all that, and we don't want to talk about it here. So there are a lot of different realities going on. However, to be a force, okay, we can actually generate. How can we have this work for everyone? How do we help how do we have conversations where we can transition from this to that, where we actually help people along? Everybody wants to help people, but then they go against their own aspiring virtues, right? The virtues they aspire to, by attacking and all the rest that goes with it. And this is why I say we need a different type of activism that isn't just fighting against protesting. It doesn't mean we shouldn't express things where there, but let's have it be better for everybody.
Exactly.
Otherwise, then we're just not being honest with you. We're not telling the truth to ourselves about seeing God in each other.
Well, the thing that perplexes me about activism and protesting is, and I'm sure that there will be those who will disagree with me. I've been around for 64 years, and the years that I've been aware of and observed protests and activism, I've never seen them solve a problem. And in this day and age in which you and I are here in the 21st century with the current activism, and again, choose your issue, it doesn't matter.
Right.
One of the paradoxes that the activists do not seem to recognize is their actions are contrary to the very thing that they're opposing. In other words, they're just as bad as those that they are opposing. And in some instances, and again, I'm not going to name issues, but in some instances, there's violence, and yet they're opposed to the violence that others are doing. And it's like,
Right.
do you see the irony here? Do
This
you
is
understand?
it.
Yeah. So
And
and when I worked for, I worked back in Phoenix. The last job I had in Phoenix was with a radio station. It was Air America Phoenix, and it was during the let's see, 43rd president's term, 2 terms. And I loved what I was doing. What I was doing, production, producing shows, producing commercials, and so on and so on and so on. I could not get on board with the cause. It didn't matter to me. I didn't care what the cause was. If that's what they wanted to direct the station towards, fine. I will produce whatever it is that you want produced and make it sound great and do the best I can in that regard. But I'm not jumping on the bandwagon. I can't, because it's not that I'm in favor of, it's that my getting on the bandwagon either way isn't going to change anything.
right.
Not
It's
on
not
that, not
helpful.
on that scale, not on that scale. Now, if I jump on the bandwagon regarding my home life and the situations there, that's a whole different ballgame. So, as you've heard this said many times, you got to pick your battles, and that isn't one I choose. Currently here on the South Coast and in California, I guess there are supposedly some new regulations regarding agriculture that have got a lot of the local family farmers up in arms and so forth. And I keep hearing this phrase from some people who are dead set against these regulations and so forth because of the harm they claim it's doing. This is the hill I want to die on. Well, guess what? First of all, I
Okay.
don't want to die on a hill. Okay. I don't want to die on a hill. I want to die in a bed asleep. Okay. That's how I'd like to go.
Right.
Uh, quietly, unobtrusively,
Quietly,
not out in,
peacefully.
not in a blaze of glory. But
Right.
again, everybody has to
Yeah.
choose the direction they want to go in. So I want to put my energies, my time, and my efforts into, and you kind of touched upon the phrase that we use here. I want to put my energies into looking for those new ways of living, because the old ways don't work. Just look around you. I mean, look at the protest, look at the activism. That is not productive.
No, it's
That is not
not.
contributing to a better society and a better civilization and a better country or state or city or whatever the community is. What is contributing to those aforementioned is doing what you can where you are in your life and in the lives of the people around you. And to that end, um, I have to say that without going into any real detail here, my wife and I just went through a very challenging last couple of months as of this conversation. And we were hit with something that knocked the pins out from under me for about 30 seconds to a minute.
That's
And
mastery.
yeah, but that long. And as soon as I regained my, shall we say, intellectual equilibrium, immediately I knew what to do. And I was sharing what I had done with someone, with a counselor that I was seeing at the time. And she said, "You did the first best thing you could do. You asked for help."
Mm.
Now, to many, "Oh, you don't do that. I don't take charity. We'll be fine." As their boat is sinking, "We'll be fine. No problem." It's like, come on. And help came. Help. I
Mm.
asked, put it out there, and so forth. So I'm a firm believer in people establishing local, local and more than local networks, maybe broaden them out. You are part of my network and so forth, as is every guest that's on this program. Some of them are closer than others, but anyway, I am a firm believer in that. To me, that is also part of quantum thinking from my standpoint, that we're all connected anyway. And I even asked help of those who were very clear in, a matter of fact, one person wanted, "Do not send me this ever again." They did not know I was serious, because the way I had phrased
Oh,
it in the text, it came across as it. And when I read it, I'm going, "Oh, I should have worded that differently. That looks like a scam." And even my own mother, who came to our aid, even asked me, she says, "Are you sure? I just want to make sure." I said, "Yes, yes, that was from me. Yes." And so now it's like, you do have to be careful how you do things, but I had a network and I got the support. Some offered advice and counseling and so forth, and others offered other forms of support that really helped, and so forth. So
and I
we
think,
have lost the reliance on each other. And again, I think that's something that we talked about earlier in terms of the height of individualism as it exists today has really, in some instances, sort of crushed the whole community concept, the whole network and connected concept.
well, we have to be careful here, Richard, because we don't want to get into an either or about it. I
No, no, no.
think
I agree.
the
I agree.
individualism is very important. It's both important because I'll just talk about my hobby, astrology, the age of Aquarius. Aquarius, the symbol is the cherub. It looks a cherub, I don't know, with the water bottle over his shoulder,
Mhm.
his or her, serving humanity. Now, the interesting thing about astrology is that with the glyph, the little symbol is waves. And so people think it's a water sign, but it's actually an air sign.
Mhm.
Those are like air waves, like it rules technology, it's Uranus, the eccentric, the unusual, the new, the future, the youth. And we're we've already entered, but we're heavily entering that vibrational frequency of Aquarius. Now, what is Aquarius? So it's serving humanity coming together. However, and the water to me represents consciousness, right? Water
Mhm.
represents consciousness. A lot of people know in one dimension, but it's not uniformity. There's a famous quote, I think I have it in my book too, by Swami Vivekananda. Unity should not be mistaken for uniformity.
Correct.
So it's not like we should all be equal. Everybody should have the same amount of money. Everybody should have the same amount of whatever. We all have the same opportunity. We all do, as just a human being on the earth. Different circumstances, but look at how many stories of people who had nothing and they became whatever they are, billionaire. So we can't follow any of that like a formula. But getting back to Aquarius, however, because Aquarius also represents individuality and it represents community. So you're, of course, right tuned in to the importance of community, which you're distinguishing for us. And so in essence, it means bringing that which is uniquely you, your individuality, your talents, your gifts, your experiences, your soul's destiny and purpose that you came in with, which is different than anyone else's. We obviously have overlap. And bringing that to the community, bringing what is uniquely yours and yours to give to the community of the whole of humanity. So this is what I mean by the both and, because people do say something like what you just said, oh, the individualism, but I think it's that getting back to why it's of the utmost, I would say, essential to be able to quantum think, not because it came through me, I'm happy it did, that because that's the kind of thinking that we need. A new worldview, I say it, paradoxical, is emerging around us. And paradoxically, we're the ones who are bringing it about. So the more we go into that third way of being the force in the world, the more effective the whole thing is going to be. And it's, again, I say 3 classes of wisdom. Universal wisdom, we're here to evolve to the highest state. That's really it. Personal wisdom, which is that wisdom that comes through you. When you express yourself, we're connecting. And we don't always see it exact, but that is the wisdom that's coming through you. When I'm speaking, that's the wisdom that's coming through me. People who are listening, and when you think holistically and holographically, you realize a conversation is one whole. So listening and speaking, it's distinct but not separate. The listening, and this is the work that Alan and I do with our clients, listening is just as crucial, as important to the conversation as is the speaking. So you have shows, people are speaking. The listeners are an essential part of your broadcast, your webcast, whatever, your podcast, whatever we're calling them today, all of the above, right?
Absolutely.
So universal wisdom, we're here to evolve to the highest. Personal wisdom, we're here to express our individuality. And the third way, because I have a video on this actually in my program, answering the call of wisdom, 3 classes of wisdom that I'm distinguishing. The third way is the cosmic wisdom, which I mentioned earlier, because that cosmic wisdom are the operating principles and laws, the laws of mind, the laws of spirit. People refer to the ancient wisdom, the perennial wisdom. I like to think of it as the universal wisdom of the masters. So we need all 3. One is the understanding we're here to evolve. You know, we see so much young people who are literally lost souls, right? It's like, why am I here? I spoke to one of them the other day, and who just really are in these questions, and you see that they're really in strife, right? Younger generations, not everyone, but more than usual, because it's a both end. What you're saying, the individualism where it separates, that's the part where it's kind of, the part that's not working of individualism.
Right.
But if we had an educational system where we're bringing people up to know you're here with a purpose, you have a personal wisdom that you're here to bring to the world. There is a larger purpose. We're all here to evolve humanity, ourselves, and everything, universally. And that, how do we do it? We do it because we tune in to the laws and principles as tools that we've been given to do it. And then when it comes down to, and we're full circle in this conversation, choice, right? So we're choosing to establish ourselves in answering the call of wisdom. As I was saying, we had education like that, maybe we would completely eliminate people being lost, not feeling like they have a purpose, wondering what's it all about, Alfie? Why am I here anyway? Why, what is going on? And being able to actually be in the presence of that sacredness within themselves.
Yeah. It's funny too, because, and it's rather ironic that you bring up education, because here on the Central Coast, there are some districts, their budgets, apparently they didn't manage properly, because now they're coming up short, and they're talking about cutting the music programs, the theater programs, and so forth.
Wow.
And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. If you were to keep the electives like music and physical education and so forth, and you knew how to teach it so that the students would learn how to read, how to write, they would learn about history, they would learn about chemistry, they would learn about civics, and so on and so forth. And I mean, I use very simple examples, like in a music class, you have an instrument. Let's just say, in it, because it was one that I learned how to play in high school, the baritone. All right, who invented the baritone? Now we're talking history. How did they come up with this? Now you're talking about design and engineer and creativity. All right, what about the notes and so forth and so on? And then eighth notes, 16th notes, eighth notes, half notes, quarter notes, and so on and so forth. Now you're talking math. And these are very simple, rudimentary concepts that I'm just throwing out there. But the point is that it is not the standard reading. Oh, by the way, I have always hated the 3 R's, because there aren't. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. No, there's only
It's
one.
not an R.
It's not an R. There's only one.
Right.
And someone say, well, no, but there's an R in writing and there's an R in arithmetic. But that's not what they're trying to tell you. It's like each one starts with an R. It doesn't. It's like, how do you spell relief? ROLAIDS. No, that's not.
It's
So
just a
anyway,
way of
but the
remembering
point,
it.
my point being that we already have the tools at our disposal, if you will, or at our fingertips, to educate ourselves about whatever it is that we want. And yeah, there are going to be those places where people are going to try to throw up information that is false, that is inaccurate. I mean, I still remember the centennial or the 500th anniversary of Christopher Columbus. In 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, as we learned in school. And I remember in 1992, during that year, I heard 3 different versions of the history of Christopher Columbus. One version, he was a saint. Another version, he was Satan. And the third version was he was somewhere in the middle. And I'd probably take a little from all three and say, yeah, because again, we're human beings. We have these, as as my a therapist going back to 1993, 94 said to me, we all have character flaws. That was my last session with her, and I never paid her. But anyway, we are human, and we do have, and again, we're all learning life lessons. And that's the one thing that they complain when we had the lockdown that the kids weren't going to school and it was going to destroy this generation, no social interaction, da 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 da. And then once they forced the schools to open again, they started sending them back, and they were probably the same people who were complaining how bad the educational system is. And I'm thinking, so basically, you would send your children back into a burning house, is what you're telling me. Come on.
Well, here's the thing, though, is that this is what I mean by we're in the restructuring. So
Yeah.
that's another reason to have a more expansive thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like to make anyone wrong, and saying, that's why I say maybe there's nothing wrong with us. In the very beginning of my book, Do Quantum Think, I say it. But there's really nothing wrong with us. We've just reached a stage in our evolutionary cycle where we're making that leap from the industrial age thinking of, material, and we look different and we look separate in the physical, everything around the physical dimension, to the more expanded way of thinking, of knowing that we really are one. We're one with the earth. The earth is the host of all the organisms called people and creatures, just as we have organisms that are living on our bodies, physical bodies. And so when you start to think, again, going back to one of 21 plus one quantum think distinctions, holistic and holographic, you realize, oh, there is no separation between the earth and us. What is that? Context is everything.
Yeah, it is.
When you shift the context, the framework from which you think, it's a new platform for thinking, not just a new idea, a new thought, you should do this, you should do that. We all know that. It's a new platform. It shifts everything. We would be treating in relationship to the earth in a whole new way. And we wouldn't be making the people wrong who ever trashed the earth or don't have that level of understanding. And this is what I mean, universal wisdom, living your virtues, not a pretense of living it, and not making yourself wrong for not living it, but awakening yourself to realize, oh my goodness, I've been judging, and I don't want to be judging. Like, I find myself judging, and I say to myself, I don't want that thought, let that thought go by. And we don't often make a distinction between thinking, which is a conscious act of where we initiate thinking, and having thoughts, which most of the time we did not originate. They're not even their own. They're just floating, as I say, through the thoughtosphere. And who knows where they come from? It's irrelevant. What's relevant is living the mastery of the moment. Next point, where if you find yourself in an ill-advised thought that in an instant, you can transform that state that you're in. And that's what you did, going back to what you were saying, that you had a set of circumstances. And the important thing that I want to point out about what you're saying, not that it isn't all important, that you were in a state of clarity to know what to do in that moment. And that is an aspect of mastery. As I said, mastery, it's a moment by moment proposition. But in order to make that type of correct decision, correct choice, correct judgment, not judgment like judging somebody, but the correct assessment and being in action, knowing what to do, practical wisdom, is it requires that we reduce the static on the radio of our being. So again, another circle within the circle. What is quantum thinking? It's that. It's reducing the static. It's learning the laws and principles. It's committing oneself to a life of mastery. Why? So that we have a joyful experience of life, so that we're actually living the love that everybody always says, oh, it's all love. Yeah, it is all love, but love is a concept or love as an actual experience. And as I know, we're at the end of the show, and I have to actually go sign documents for a real estate closing, but I want to just leave everyone with this very quickly, a distinction that I call the 4 aspects of knowing, one of the quantum distinctions in the system. And this is sort of like to gauge yourself, because what I was just saying, is it love as a great idea, or is it love that you're actually embodying, living, experiencing? So the 4 aspects of knowing, and it's an odd question. How are you related to what you know? And what I mean by what you know is what you hold in awareness. So that's what I mean by what you know. So are you holding it in unawareness? And I'll just say them quickly. Unawareness, conceptual knowing, intuitive knowing, or participatory knowing. These are the 4 aspects of knowing. And a distinction, I'm not saying I have the ultimate truth, but it's a way of giving you access to living more effectively and joyfully, and putting that out, of course, into the world. So unawareness is your flotsam and jetsam on the sea of life. You know, that's the hider. Something happens, you're in reaction, you don't even know what's going on. Somebody protests, you join the protest, but you don't even know why. Okay, that's what we call unawareness. So how do you know what you know? You're in unawareness. It's when you're in that knee-jerk reaction. When you're in a state of, how are you related to what you know? When you're in a state of, oh, let's just use love as the example. So in unawareness, love is, what's love got to do with it? You know, that would be unawareness. In a state of conceptual knowing, love, it's like the universe is all love. God is love. We're all love. All we need is love. What the world needs now. Love, sweet love. All great songs, by the way. And that's true. But as a concept, it hasn't gone anywhere, like the protest. In intuitive knowing, it's love is, you're feeling it, okay? You're feeling that is really why we're here. What's the basis of everything in one dimension? Of course, quantum think I distinguish 7 dimensions. We don't have time to go into it now, but so we're talking multidimensionally. So love and intuitive knowing. So intuitive knowing, it sounds good because you're kind of tuned in, right, to all that is, but you're not yet one with it. It's like you tuning in to something else. So that's love, intuitive knowing. I know I should be loving. I know I should be more loving. That's kind of intuitive loving. Love. Intuitive knowing is love. And participatory knowing. And this is the aspect of knowing, that's the aspect of intent. Intent is not, for me, a future action. It's an activation of the personal resonant field. So love in the participatory sense, this is what I'm talking about, where you're exuding it, you're experiencing it. You've ever been around someone who was just like pure love vibration. They didn't say a word. You felt it, because this is participatory knowing, one with the sacred, all that is, source creator, however you want to think of it, or however you want to relate to it, I should say. But it is being in that experience. And when you are in masterful relationship with your own power of intent, intent as the active dynamic that we've been endowed with to create with when used consciously, then that you're going to attract many results consistent with it. But it's not only that, it's that that's an inner knowing, it's an inner conviction, because you're actually being that result. So when you asked for what you needed, in that case, help, and you got it, and it made everything work. It's like knowing that if you did that, if you took that practical action, that it was going to work. You knew it, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you ever thought that it wouldn't work, or probably, it would have come through you as something else. But getting back again and to complete on it, it's that we're here, we have been challenged with creating clarity on the radio of our being, so that we have 4 bars up on the cell phone, not 2, not 1.
Right.
That we're getting clear channel connection. That's when we're going to be able to tell, oh, was that a spam or not? Was that because we are so clear that our faculties of mind, intent, intuition, subtle energy, resonance, meditation, which I consider a faculty of mind, they're all working in harmony with one another. And we're getting the clear channel connection to be able to get that coming through and making the choices that are going to bring the greatest good to ourselves, our communities, and the world.
Dianne Collins is my guest, and we're talking, of course, in quite a lot of detail here about the question that we pose in the title of her book, Do You Quantum Think? And DianneCollins.com, I believe, is your website, and we encourage people to find out more. We'll be linked to your website, and we are very grateful that you have given us quite literally more time than any of the other interviews that we've done with you. This went quite a distance, so we won't keep you any longer. But what I do want to do is, since it's been a while, and we've changed them a little bit, I have those 3 final questions. One is the same, and I think the other 2, I think we may have changed them up a little. So we'll start there as we wrap things up here on Tell Me Your Story with the question, who is Dianne Collins?
Dianne Collins is, I've lately said, a girl with a new point of view. A girl who only wants the best for everyone and wants to be able to emanate that so that people connect to the best in themselves and others.
What is it that gets you up in the morning?
Having that come about. I would say having that come about. And, right now I actually am working on, I completed a pitch Bible, it's called, for a TV series, sitcom. And I love entertainment, and I've had this dream for I don't know, 30 years. And now I'm bringing it about. And I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah.
Very cool.
I don't want to say any more
Nope.
about it.
No, no, no,
But
no. We'll
next
have.
time I'm on,
I was, I was.
my intent is I'll be able to say, oh, and there's the show.
Well, we'll hold you to that. We'll have you back. Absolutely. Final question is, what was your best day?
What was my best day? Wow, that's an interesting question. How about today? I
Well,
know what you're saying. I mean, you could reflect on, oh, I was so happy when this happened or that
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
happened, or I just think that, I like to think of it as today because that gets me present. And yeah, and of course, there have been many, many beautiful peak experiences that I've had, as we all have throughout our lifetime.
Mm,
But I'm going to say right now, today.
okay. Well, I thank you again for joining us, and I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. As I've said before, we're here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story, and Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., and Monday mornings at 1 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We also podcast these on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and other locations. And we're on YouTube where you can watch as well as listen to these interviews. I hope you'll subscribe as well as click notification so that the next time I post another conversation of the 9 each week, that you will tune in and listen and or watch. And if you can support the work we're doing financially, you'd like to be a part of the work that we are doing through that method, we would be gratefully appreciative. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. Just put in my email address, which is richard@richarddugan.com, and also spend some time going within during this, the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, where we ask that you spend that time going within and listening to that still small voice. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.